Let's learn more from Max Wolff. He's the chief economist of the Phoenix Group. So, Max, what do we know about Jerome Powell, and why is he often called the Republican Yellen?
I think folks generally see him as somewhat dovish, i.e. pretty willing to have a large balance sheet. He said he thinks the Fed will have a balance sheet of 2.5 to 3 trillion US dollars, even 5 years from now or 4 years from now. So fairly dovish on rates, very slow, very steady interest rate increases a la Yellen. So it favors a policy, as far as we know, that's somewhat similar and has 5 years of record, so we can sort of see what he's done over the last 5 years while he's been on the board. And so he doesn't seem like a shocking candidate. He's been around, he's well known, been a successful attorney and financier.
So it's safe to say his policies are pretty much in line with Janet Yellen.
We expect them to be. It is interesting that for the first time in about 35 years, we'll have someone who isn't an economist. So we'll have somebody whose background is more law and business. And that's interesting because we're going to be in a very technically challenged time, because we're going to try to take down the size of the balance sheet. We're also going to try to raise interest rates. We're going to try to do so on borrowed time, to the extent that every 6.5 years approximately, the U.S. has had a bit of a recession since World War II, and we're 7+ years into expansion now. So it's going to be a difficult sort of set of circumstances that Mr. Powell inherits as governor, should he get the nod from both the president and then, of course, the Senate confirmation.
And why is he considered a good compromise for Trump?
Well, so I think Trump has a lot of these conversations with himself, and so it's hard to know. If you're not him, you're probably not invited to this circle of one. That being said, there were some fears that he would have a sort of really hardcore approach where there was a notion of the Fed as meddling, and that you wanted a really hard-nosed monetary policy or a hawk who would come in there and sort of push the Federal Reserve, the U.S. Central Bank, away from being kind of aggressive in monetary stimulus. And in this choice, we're being told this is a establishment candidate who will continue the policies really of Greenspan and Bernanke and Yellen, who are kind of cut from similar cloth policy-wise. And so it would be the fourth individual to occupy the seat with a similar outlook.
And Max, if there is any interest hike under him, if he's confirmed, how would that affect Beijing's investment and RMB value?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we will see interest rate increases. That is the policy. I think we'll also see a shrinking of the balance sheet, and I think in both cases gradually. For the Chinese aspirations to global currency, any mismanagement in the United States might pressure the RMB to take a larger global role faster. I think we've seen some of that already with some policy decisions made, not in the Federal Reserve, but at the highest levels of the U.S. government. And the other thing is, Beijing is a huge investor and will no doubt be a huge investor in the United States. And if we do things that strengthen the U.S. dollar, those investments are good, and that kind of strength of the dollar might be good for exporters. And of course, China is a major global exporter.
And Max, another name that was mentioned earlier was John Taylor. He was considered a top contender. What happened? Why not go with him?
So certainly very well known, very widely respected as an economist, maybe most famous for the Taylor rule. He would have been a little bit more of a departure in terms of the policy approach, favoring a slightly more strict set of rules around when there's inflation and when there's not inflation. And he would have signaled a little bit of a intellectual or ideological departure from Bernanke and Yellen. So I think it's more continuity to not make that selection. But again, this was a sort of behind closed doors vetting, which is not uncommon. And so the deliberations and conversations that were had with the candidates who were not selected, even the ones that were the candidates were selected, we'll probably never know. And I myself don't have any particular ability to know what was said or not said.
All right, we'll leave it there. Max Wolff, thank you so much.